Hello internet users and welcome back to another video. It's well known by now that the Pokemon series has an enormous amount of glitches and oversights, and on this channel I've covered many situations where these can be used to break the games in an amusing way. By combining a number of seemingly unrelated things, we can set up a game state that can no longer be played the way the developers intended. These scenarios can become so broken that you might even need to restart your entire save just to get out of them. Or worse, spend several real-life hours in a Pokemon battle that is just barely possible to complete. For today's video, we're going to be heading back to Generation 1 to create yet another one of these nightmare situations. And unlike previous How to Ruin videos, instead of using a trainer battle, this time we will be focused entirely on a specific overworld location. My name is Picasbury, and this is How to Ruin Cycling Road in Pokemon Red and Blue. Without wasting any time, I'm going to go over all of the steps that you can do to turn this iconic Pokemon location into an absolutely miserable experience. Many of you probably remember Cycling Road as a straightforward path where you just go south for a couple of minutes. But as this video goes on, we'll be going over several gameplay mechanics and oversights that just so happen to work perfectly here to make something unique happen. But let's not get too far ahead. Before any of this can start to make any sense to you viewers, we first need to go over the initial setup. For this to work, we're going to need a save file of Red or Blue that has progressed through most of the game and has access to Cinnabar Island. However, there are a few items and events that must be ignored while playing. The first and most important is the Snorlax west of Celadon City. In normal gameplay, there are two paths that the player can take to Fuchsia City, both of which have been blocked by a sleeping Snorlax. When setting up the save, make sure that the Snorlax near Vermilion City is the one that is woken up. We will need the Celadon one to use later on. For the next step, we need to deal with the fossil key item that the game forces you to collect early on. At Cinnabar Island, visit the Pokemon Lab, revive the fossil Pokemon, and then immediately go and release it. This will prevent the player from gaining access to an additional Pokemon much later on. There is another fossil in the game known as the Old Amber, however it is a bit out of the way to get, so it's easy enough to avoid picking it up entirely during the playthrough. If it is obtained for any reason though, you'll have to revive and release Aerodactyl too. Next, while we're on Cinnabar Island, it is important that every single item here is picked up, and every trainer is also defeated. This includes everyone in the gym and the Pokemon Mansion. Once this is done, we'll now heal at the island's Pokemon Center, making the game mark this as our last healing location. You might be wondering what Cinnabar Island has to do with Cycling Road, but don't worry, I promise this will make much more sense later on. For the next part, we're going to fly to Celadon City and head towards the hotel in the southern part of the map. Because we're avoiding entering other Pokemon Centers, we'll have to go over to this tile here and activate the completely invisible PC. If you don't know why this is here, the simple explanation is that the hotel map was originally a copy and pasted Pokemon Center that was edited into something else. And although the developers removed the PC's graphic at the end of the room, they accidentally left in the event tile that prompts the PC's activation. By using this, we will swap out our Pokemon to leave us with just one in our party. This single Pokemon is a level 100 Exeggutor that only knows the move Explosion, and is currently afflicted with poison. Gen 1 games do not have a move deleter, so having one move like this can only be accomplished by transferring it to a Gen 2 game and then sending it back after deleting the other three. Now that we have the one Pokemon we need, we'll go ahead and release all other Pokemon in the PC, making it impossible to change our party anymore. For this next part, we'll need to get rid of our money and almost all of our items. After spending all of our money at the department store, we'll go into the item menu and throw away almost everything except key items and a stack of healing potions. In Pokemon games, you cannot normally throw away key items. If you try, the game will display a message saying that the item is too important to toss. However, due to the limited inventory space in Generation 1, the game allows you to store them inside of the PC. So once again, we will return to the hotel's invisible PC and store these key items away. We may not be able to delete them completely, but as you'll soon see, putting them here is more than enough to cause problems later on. When this is all done, the only thing left in our main inventory is the stack of potions. We're now ready to truly break the game. With our lone Executor, we now have to start walking from Celadon all the way to Fuchsia City. Keep in mind, though, that we still need to leave the Celadon Snorlax in place, so this means we'll have to take the longest route possible along the eastern side of the map. As we make this walk, the Executor will take poison damage in the overworld, indicated by a visual effect every 4 steps. The reason we have the potions in our inventory is to keep Executor's HP from hitting 0 during the trip. Something we must also remember is that we have to avoid entering into any trainer battles, or the entire setup will have been ruined. There is no need to worry though. Because this save file has been played normally up to this point, it can be assumed that all mandatory trainers have been defeated, so it should be easy to get to Fuchsia without any battles. When we finally do reach Fuchsia via the East Gate, we'll immediately head to the West Gate towards Cycling Road. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my videos, you might be wondering why we're doing this. Because we deposited our key items, we don't have the bicycle, which means the guard will prevent us from entering the area. However, there is a very infamous oversight you can do with these guards to bypass this. When you first try to pass without the bike, the guard will call you over, which will force your character to approach the counter before he continues speaking. After he tells you that you can't pass, the game will then force you to take a step to the right. But if you're at the top of the room, already next to the counter, when you walk in front of him, the game will skip moving your character. And because of this, there is now a brief window between the guard's text boxes where the player can move another step forward by holding left on the D-pad. Even after the game makes you take a step to the right, there is still time to move left again, which ends the cutscene past the guard's line of sight. So because of this simple trick, we can proceed without having the bike with us. But when the game loads the Cycling Road map, you'll notice right away that we'll be riding one anyway. This is because the game forces the player into the cycling state when using the entrances here. Because the guard is meant to be the inventory check for the item, the game incorrectly assumes we must have the bike. But anyhow, with that taken care of, we will continue through Cycling Road, going all the way to the top of the hill until we reach the other gatehouse at the north. When we go through this building, we'll be at the other side of the Celadon Snorlax. Next, we'll start walking back and forth, allowing the poison damage to hurt Executor until it has exactly 1 HP left. After that, we'll go into the item menu and throw away whatever potions are left, leaving us with absolutely nothing. And finally, to complete the setup, we'll save the game next to the Snorlax. With all of these actions complete, we have just put the save file into a broken and nearly unplayable state. As always, let's assume that this save was given to some unsuspecting player. If they were told to play it, the following is what they would have to deal with. Upon loading the save, they can only move up to 4 steps before the Executor will take its final points of poison damage, causing it to faint. When this happens, the game will force the player to warp to the last used Pokemon Center. As you'll recall, this was all the way back on Cinnabar Island. Being sent here this way causes the game to become completely unplayable. Because we previously got rid of all the trainers and items here, there is no possible way to obtain any more Pokemon. Our money will remain at 0 forever, and we can't buy Pokeballs to catch anything else. This is a big problem because Executor cannot learn Surf or Fly, which leaves us stuck on the island. None of the remaining key items in the PC can do anything here either. When the player goes back to Cinnabar, there is nothing else you can do, except delete the save and start the game over. So with that, now you should all understand why you can't let the poison damage hit Executor. If this Pokemon ever faints, you'll have to reload back to where the game was last saved. But if we can't walk around, then what else can we do? With no way to heal the poison, or recover any more HP, things are looking pretty grim right now. You might assume that escaping this situation will involve using the Snorlax next to us. However, the actual reason we left it there is just so it blocks the short way back to Celadon. That's all. Because we don't have any key items with us, we don't have the Poke-Flute either, so it's impossible to wake it up right now anyway. This means that the only way we can go is back down Cycling Road. But how would it be possible to do this? After all, didn't we just establish that Executor is about to faint in 4 steps? Well, there is actually one more tiny glitch I need to explain for this video, and this one is going to be the real key to ruining this whole area. As I've mentioned before, poison damage happens in the overworld every 4 steps. However, in Generation 1, there is a very simple, yet often overlooked method of working around this. Whenever you save and reload your game, the game will refresh the 4-step counter. This means that if you take 3 steps and then save and reset, you can take another 3 steps, repeating the process over and over without ever taking damage from the poison once. Obviously, this is a very, very tedious thing to do, so even in casual play, this exploit isn't really worth using. But in the case of the save file we've just set up, this method is quite literally the only way to continue playing without warping the cinnabar. So with that, the goal should become pretty clear. To rescue this game, we have to use the 3-step save method over and over, all the way through Cycling Road until we can reach Fuchsia City's Pokemon Center, where we can finally heal the poison for good. Luckily for us, when repeating the trick to skip the Northern Guard, it can be done in under 4 steps, so re-entering Cycling Road is still possible. However, there is one more major factor to keep in mind for this area. Because Cycling Road is meant to simulate your character riding down a hill, at all times, the game will be trying to move your character towards the bottom of the screen. However, a simple way to control yourself is to hold down the B button. This will keep you in place and even allow you to move 1 step at a time, as long as the button is still held. It sounds easy enough like that, right? Just save every 3 steps, making sure to only move while you're holding B. But one minor issue with this is the fact that the menu in this game is brought up with the start button. Typically, most control schemes for this game will have the start button in a place where your right thumb is meant to press it. But in this setup, your right thumb will always be needed for the B button, meaning you'll have to awkwardly use your D-pad thumb to open the save menu over and over every 3 steps. This doesn't really add more time to the escape, but I just like making things more annoying to do. Another thing to keep in mind is the trainers on this route. Because the save initially used the other Snorlax route, all of them have been left undefeated here, and were avoided while we made the climb to the top. It's very easy to accidentally fall into their line of sight and be forced into a battle. If this happens, you'll have no choice but to reset again, as the battle will be impossible. Since Exeggutor only knows Explosion, it will instantly faint the moment it tries to attack. This will cause a loss and force the player to warp to Cinnabar. So in addition to carefully tracking your movement as you save and reload tons of times, you must also navigate around the trainers. To give you an idea of just how obnoxious this is, here is a map showing how Cycling Road connects to Celadon and Fuchsia. This entire vertical section must be traversed using the 3-step exploit, all while the game forces your movement on its own. Keeping all of that in mind, the next question is obvious. How long would it take to go from the Celadon Snorlax all the way to Fuchsia's Pokemon Center? Given the nature of everything I've just explained, a serious attempt at this escape would take a long time to get through, even if you have an optimal path memorized for Cycling Road. And obviously, the time spent on this escape will barely even take place on the road itself. The majority of this anti-speedrun will be spent skipping through the opening animation and title screen just to repeatedly load the save. The first time I went through all of this, I ended up with a final time of 43 minutes and 4 seconds. However, as expected, it was pretty easy to make some mistakes. After getting used to the run and optimizing my movement, I attempted it again and ended up with a much better time of 42 minutes and 26 seconds. Regardless though, I think you can all agree that this is an incredibly long time to spend on a path that can normally be traversed in a couple of minutes. And this is why I find this whole setup hilarious. By making use of a lot of tiny mechanics and glitches, we're able to create one of the most absurd situations I've ever made in a Pokemon game. This isn't like the long battles I've done before. You can't just sit there mashing the A button until you're free. Here on Cycling Road, if you want to escape in a reasonable amount of time, you have to give the game your full attention as you reset and try and move as optimally as possible. But I think you all get the point now. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you look forward to more videos. If you want to see similar ridiculous Pokemon setups, feel free to check out some of the other videos I've made on softlocks. I also stream on Twitch, and you can go watch me there if you'd like. I do plenty of different things there, including watching Mario Party computers make the worst possible plays. My name is Picasbury, and thanks for watching.